Daily Words of God. Only those who submit to the Creator's sovereignty can attain true freedom. Because people do not recognize God's orchestrations and God's sovereignty, they always face fate defiantly and with a rebellious attitude. And they always want to cast off God's authority and sovereignty and the things fate has in store, hoping in vain to change their current circumstances and alter their fate. But they can never succeed and are thwarted at every turn. This struggle, which takes place deep in one's soul, brings profound pain of the sort that carves itself into one's bones, as one fritters away their life all the while. What is the cause of this pain? Is it because of God's sovereignty, or because a person was born unlucky? Obviously, neither is true. At bottom, it is caused by the paths people take, the ways they choose to live their lives. Some people may not have realized these things, but when you truly know, when you truly come to recognize that God has sovereignty over human fate, when you truly understand that everything God has planned for you and decided for you is a great benefit and protection, then you feel your pain begin to lighten, and your whole being becomes relaxed, free, liberated. Judging from the states of the majority of people, they objectively cannot truly come to terms with the practical value and meaning of the Creator's sovereignty over human fate. Even though, on a subjective level, they do not want to keep on living as they did before and want relief from their pain. Objectively, they cannot truly recognize and submit to the Creator's sovereignty, and still less do they know how to seek out and accept the Creator's orchestrations and arrangements. So, if people cannot truly recognize the fact that the Creator has sovereignty over human fate and over all human matters, if they cannot truly submit to the Creator's dominion, then it will be difficult for them not to be driven and fettered by the idea that one's fate is in one's own hands. It will be difficult for them to shake off the pain of their intense struggle against fate and the Creator's authority. And needless to say, it will also be hard for them to become truly liberated and free, to become people who worship God. But there is an exceedingly simple way to free oneself from this state, which is to bid farewell to one's former way of living, to say goodbye to one's previous goals in life, to summarize and analyze one's previous lifestyle, view of life, pursuits, desires, and ideals, and then to compare them with God's will and demands for man, and see whether any of them is consistent with God's will and demands, whether any of them delivers the right values of life, leads one to a greater understanding of the truth, and allows one to live with humanity and the likeness of a human being. When you repeatedly investigate and carefully dissect the various goals that people pursue in life and their myriad ways of living, you will find not one of them conforms to the Creator's original intention with which He created humanity. All of them draw people away from the Creator's sovereignty and care. They are all traps which cause people to become depraved and which lead them to hell. After you recognize this, your task is to lay aside your old view of life. Stay far from various traps. Let God take charge of your life and make arrangements for you. It is to try only to submit to God's orchestrations and guidance, to live without individual choice, and to become a person who worships God. This sounds easy, but is a hard thing to do. Some people can bear the pain of it, others cannot. Some are willing to comply, others are unwilling. Those who are unwilling lack the desire and the resolution to do so. They are clearly aware of God's sovereignty, know perfectly well that it is God who plans out and arranges human fate. And yet they still kick and struggle and remain unreconciled to laying their fates in God's palm and submitting to God's sovereignty. Moreover, they resent God's orchestrations and arrangements. So there will always be some people who want to see for themselves what they are capable of. They want to change their fates with their own two hands, or to achieve happiness by their own power, to see whether they can overstep the bounds of God's authority and rise above God's sovereignty. The tragedy of man is not that he seeks a happy life, not that he pursues fame and fortune, or struggles against his own fate through the fog, but that after he has seen the Creator's existence, after he has learned the fact that the Creator has sovereignty over human fate, he still cannot mend his ways, cannot pull his feet out of the mire, but hardens his heart and persists in his errors. He would rather keep thrashing in the mud, vying obstinately against the Creator's sovereignty, resisting it until the bitter end, all without the slightest shred of contrition. It is only when he lies broken and bleeding that he at last decides to give up and turn back. This is true human sorrow. So I say, those who choose to submit are wise, and those who choose to struggle and flee are foolish indeed.